Well, guys, it's 1 p.m., so I want to introduce us all formally and
Yeah.
bring on all our guests. So thank you so much for joining us. We have Amelia from OFX on the line, and we have Blair from Amazon or A Prep Canada. So today the discussion is centered around sustaining Amazon businesses during COVID-19 and some of the limitations that we're seeing on FBA, so Fulfilled by Amazon. I want to actually get started through explaining FBA and FBM and what the differences are. So I know Blair is going to be talking a lot about Amazon and how it all works. What we want to discuss today is really around operations, the current climate, your alternatives, and so on. So before we get into the topics of discussion, Amelie, if you don't mind giving us a quick introduction on yourself and your areas of expertise.
Yeah, so my name is Amelie Deschenes, and I look after partnerships at OFX, and we're an online money transfer provider. So we help people and businesses make their international payments. So obviously, a lot of the online sellers are sourcing abroad and selling abroad. So that's where we come in the equation. And I'll tell you a bit more about it later. But we've been busy. The moment there is volatility and movements in currencies, it triggers people to act, right? There can be opportunities, or there can be payments you really need to make done before the currency moves in a negative way for you. So we've been really busy since the beginning of March.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I'm
Pleasure.
sure there's a lot more to come from you
Yeah.
during this session. Blair, give us a little bit of a quick intro on yourself and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. And good morning, Ken, by the way. So yeah, essentially, I'm founder and CMO of AIMS ePrep Canada. We help small to medium to Fortune 1000 and Inc. 500 brands sell on Amazon's marketplace. So predominantly, it's the warehousing, fulfillment, logistics solutions that we provide, all the way to end-to-end account management and full suite solutions for these Amazon businesses. So yeah, my past was I was a previous Amazon seller, like a lot of the individuals in the space. I've consulted for some pretty large firms in that area. But as you can imagine, the past few weeks have been an absolute roller coaster of emotions for a lot of the sellers here. So I've been going through it with hundreds of them, trying to facilitate, trying to get things off the ground and hopefully help out some businesses. So it's been a crazy ride. Hopefully I can add some insight in just what I'm seeing in this space, seeing it from the front end of what these sellers are doing. So yeah, it's busy. It's busy, but everyone's getting through, and we're really taking it day by day. So we're right in the heartbeat of everything Amazon right now.
Yeah, and I think the topic is really well noted for the time that we're currently in. And I hope that both of you throughout this presentation will be able to provide us with real life examples, because I really want to, when we talk about various concepts, I think we need to bring it to life. So if you're speaking about anything to do with Amazon, Blair especially, you have a lot of clients that you work with on a day-to-day basis that you're seeing are either shifting or making changes to the way they work. Amelie, I'm sure you're getting tons and tons of questions. I know when we spoke, a lot of your businesses are Amazon based. So
Yeah.
it's great to be able to have this wealth of knowledge that we can exchange with our audience and just kind of make sure that everybody is kind of on the same page. So without further ado, I'm going to quickly kind of talk a little bit about what we want to cover today. So first and foremost, we're all going to give a bit of an update on our operations and where we currently are. There's been a few changes on Amazon that have been drastic repercussions to sellers as well as buyers. Some of the stuff that's going on with Amazon that we're not 100% sure of, and there is so much going on the internet right now. So what's real, what's rumor, what's fake? And then I think what we really wanted to go around today and provide insights on is, what are your alternatives? You have to change in one way or the other, and how can we make that change really easy for you? What options are out there for people who are selling on Amazon, and what options are there for people who just sell on Shopify or other e-commerce stores? How can they really come out and be able to get the idea of everything together? Shahil and Ken, welcome. Just to answer your quick question, yes, this is recorded and will be available to view later. And finally, I want to kind of, we'll talk about payments because, a ton of your money goes to paying commissions when you have to move currencies from, USD or GBP into Canadian dollar and so on and so forth. So Amelie is an expert on that, and hopefully we'll be able to get some insights on how you can really make your dollar work more. So without further ado, I want to jump into some of the updates on business operations overall. So from an e-shipper perspective, we are significantly lucky during this time. Our business is completely online. We're an online platform just like Expedia or Trivago, which allows us to really work completely remotely from our homes. We've had to make a few adjustments. We've had to buy some laptops, and we've had to really kind of monitor a little bit of the productivity of our clients. But from an e-shipper perspective, when you're thinking about shipping labels and support services across the board, all our services are working at 100%. You can email all our account managers or call them. Most of the queries we're getting are going through support@eshipper.com. And this is being looked at by 6 or 7 individuals in the company, including management and leadership. So please use that email address if you have any queries and you're not able to get through to your account manager. We created a pretty nice resources page for each and everybody who's out there. Whether you are an eShipper customer or not, this is a great page for you to get updates on what's going on with the economy, with politics, with the carriers, and most importantly, how it's all coming together, and we're updating that on a daily basis. So today we heard from DHL Express that some of the shipments that are time sensitive on their side, they're adding a certain surcharge to these. We've added that onto the page. So as we hear more and more from our carriers and we research more into the market, we're adding more and more updates. So that's eshipper.com/COVID-updates. From an eShipper Plus perspective, this is more of a hands-on business function for us. So we have warehouse staff that are coming in. It's been a difficult journey for us to kind of assess and decide whether we should carry on or how we should deal with health and safety and things like that. However, hearing our Ontario Premier Ford coming out the other day and saying, there's a 14-day shutdown for all non-essential businesses. However, warehousing and logistics is seen as an essential business. Some of our customers are shipping food, baby products, and so on and so forth. So we are 100% out there getting your products out and kind of functioning at 100%. What's most important is that, we've taken a lot of precautions. So there is a, physical check every staff member coming into the warehouse each morning, and we're making sure that each one of them are looking completely fit and haven't haven't had a bad night or anything like that. Everybody is wearing gloves and masks, and I promise you it's not easy working in these type of conditions. You're seeing complaints coming from frontline doctors and nurses. Blair, I know you're in the warehouse and you've been wearing a mask. It gets really hot in there, but the most important thing is that business continuity at this point is extremely important for us, because we know that this is the livelihood of our customers, right? So we've increased sanitation measures. We're working with Health Canada as well as the World Health Organization to ensure workplaces are clean to the highest standard, and everybody is washing their hands and making sure that there's some level of social distancing in the warehouse too. So from those two verticals and functions of our business, we are 100% go. Blair, maybe you can jump in and talk a little bit about AMZ Prep and what your current operations are like.
Yeah. So as of now, we are still working. We're just working at a limited capacity. So very similar to what Amazon's been structuring, because a lot of the businesses we work with are essentially in dire circumstances, and they need to ensure that some of their products are still going over to FBA or directly to their customers. So because of those, we're just prioritizing essential goods. So we've limited some inbound shipments to make sure that the team can manage it. But from an essential goods standpoint, all hands are on deck. I'm rolling up the sleeves and making sure we're busy trying to get everything out. But that's the line where a lot of these businesses still have the opportunity to send to Amazon, where a lot of the other businesses have their hands tied in terms of they didn't fall under the quote unquote essential goods. So they're stuck in a really tricky situation. But as of now, we are still working. But the top priority is making sure all the essential goods, especially anything on the medical forefront of things, are getting over to FBA. And a lot of these businesses are actually just transitioning over to FBM, which we can talk about later, just to make sure that it's out to customers as quickly as possible. Because What we're seeing is because of the Amazon delays in their shipping times, whether that's with Prime or if you're not a Prime member, it's almost a month in shipping times. We're trying to get creative and figure out solutions in the meantime.
Great. Thank you for that update. So I think with that being said, it brings us really well into the next segment of what we want to discuss. So in essence, I think the idea for us all is, how do we move forward from here? What's going on in the Amazon climate right now? And how do we adjust? How do we help our clients to really think about next steps and, understanding what the changes are, what those mean for them? We're hearing from the government and we're hearing from businesses that this is a 2-week shutdown or this is a 2-week delay, but I'm not so sure it's going to be 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks is at the minimum, and these things could go on for months and months. I know in the UK, the minister has said it might end up having to be in some level of isolation or quarantine for months to come, and we're nowhere near peak. So what do you kind of see going on in Amazon, and maybe explain to us what you're feeling in terms of what you're hearing from current competitors, colleagues, so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's an absolute roller coaster of emotions for a lot of these businesses. As a lot of individuals may know, some of them just may be newer to the Amazon space that are listening in. But essentially what happened is Amazon temporarily suspended a lot of inbound shipments for any sellers that aren't following under this very blanket statement of what an essential good is. And because of this, if you didn't fall under this tier of what is an essential good, you won't be able to at least use Amazon's fulfillment service. And to go one level deeper, FBA versus FBM, just so people have context and what that is the biggest issue is currently the two fulfillment services Amazon offers is there's fulfillment by Amazon, which is FBA, and then there's fulfillment by merchant, which is FBM. And the biggest thing that Amazon has decided is because of the amount of volume going out to end customers in the sections of medical supplies, pet products, baby category, they're essentially just trying to prioritize these to the best of their ability. And because of this, they're trying to at least close off the gaps of everything coming inbound. And because of this, and because of the volume going outbound to the end customers in that last mile, they've essentially put a halt to thousands of businesses sending to Amazon.com or anywhere in Europe as well. So because of this, it's caused an absolute panic in the Amazon space. As we live and breathe it, it's just absolute mayhem in terms of these businesses had their 90% of their businesses turn lights off overnight. So they're scrambling to find other solutions, what those other opportunities look like. But Amazon, when they announced it last week, said as of April 5th, they're trying to get all inbound shipments for these sellers that sell on Amazon back to normal. But as you mentioned, Imti, it is a very open-ended statement. So the direction of April 5th, as we get closer and closer to that date, the climate is changing every single day. So whether that stays as April 5th, if they're going to be able to bring on as many employees to make sure that they can facilitate accordingly, it's a little bit tricky of a situation for them navigating.
Yeah,
we're trying to offer up more long-term solutions so that when April 5th rolls around and if situations don't change, people aren't kind of left on their head thinking left and right of their next opportunity. So we're trying to be as proactive as possible. But yeah, the biggest issue right now is they can't get their products into FBA. And because of what 99% of their business model and core values were on, which is relying on Amazon to do their fulfillment, they're essentially left in the dark, which has caused all these issues.
And just to jump in, so I know that you defined necessity goods as household staples, medical supplies, other high demand products. Is there specific things that you're seeing that are also going through as necessity? Because this also opens up a door for Amazon sellers to diversify their product sets. So it's a two-part question in essence. Is the first is you've got people who are normally selling electronics or whatever else that might be able to get their hands on other products that they want to now diversify to. And then more importantly, do you see Amazon Canada following the same footsteps and kind of, if our sellers here in Canada are already selling product, maybe they need to start thinking ahead of the curve too?
Yeah. So the answer to the first part of the question, essentially what defines a necessity good, Amazon was very creative in terms of what they put as that blanket statement, similar to what happened here in Ontario and what they defined as necessity businesses versus not. It's been essentially a very gray area that people are navigating every day. But the list, which I have here, is the following. It's baby, health and household, and these are categories on Amazon. Beauty and personal care, which includes any sort of personal care appliances, grocery as a whole, industrial and scientific, and then pet supplies. But what we're seeing is there's huge discrepancies on what falls under those categories, what doesn't. There was a funny thing that I was reading from one of the sellers we work with, that they were able to sell a fish tank, but they weren't able to sell their medical masks. They got banned from the medical masks, but they're still allowed to sell their fish tanks on Amazon. So this huge algorithm change in terms of, there's not someone individually watching a lot of this. It's more on the development and the algorithm of what Amazon decides as what's necessity, what isn't. It falls under those categories. But even inside of that, like, we've seen more general groceries be able to get across things like Fruit Loop cereals and Crush Pops and Dorito chips, which is just very subjective. Some would define that as a necessity good. Some would define that as it's not the biggest priority right now if the Doritos get across the border. So we've seen a huge gap in terms of what that falls under. So those are the broader categories. And if it falls under that, a lot of these businesses are in the safe end. But what we're seeing is those necessity tiers, those only apply to Amazon.com and everything happening in Amazon Europe. For some reason, as of now, the Canadian Amazon market just hasn't been affected by these changes. So as of while we're still speaking, you're still able to send any of your products into Amazon Canada, which for a lot of people is a blessing. And a lot of these businesses that are selling on .com that basically had their business shut off overnight are at least trying to transition to the Canadian market. But to answer the second question, I most definitely think Amazon Canada will follow, whether that's to the extent that Amazon.com did. I don't think so, just on a given basis of the .com market is 10 to 20 times larger than the Canadian end of things. So I don't think they're dealing with the volume adjustments that the US market and the amount of customers trying to order every single day. So they've been able to at least sustain without impacting day-to-day operations. But I think this next week or two is really going to take the test of time to see where they stand after this week, if they're going to be shutting down, if they're relocating. So we're pushing sellers to at least get stock in Amazon in the meantime for Canada. So while you have the opportunity, at least take advantage while you can.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in. So we'll try and sift through a couple of questions. And then I want to bring Emily in as well and get her point of view from what she's hearing from her clients. But Blair, for you, I mean, you're obviously seeing these restrictions in the US. Do you feel they're going to be coming into Canada anytime soon?
It's a lot of what we're seeing with Amazon. They're really providing blanket statements. So the volatility of Amazon and the whole thing of putting all your eggs in a basket very much applies to the situation. So I think to an extent they're going to begin limiting, just because we're seeing a lot of US based businesses expand to the Canadian market, which is essentially going to cause the bottleneck effect that's going to happen at Canadian fulfillment centers. But as of today, everything's still the business as usual on the Canadian forefront. But I think this week, as the announcement went out yesterday, they kind of finalized that this is the first day that a lot of businesses can't operate here in Ontario. This by Friday, I think they would make a statement, but it's a very tricky situation with Amazon. You don't really know, and they'll leave you into the dark till last second. So we're keeping everyone posted, but we're really playing it day by day, case by case, because we just don't know on the Canadian forefront.
Okay, I see two questions that are very similar here. So are there any restrictions right now on FBA Canada? And are you seeing any delays of non-essential goods being sent into FBA Canada? So very similar questions. Are you seeing any changes going on from a Canadian perspective?
Yeah, on our end, essentially not too much. I know inbound shipments, just because UPS is getting a little bit flooded, just coordinating with them has caused some delays on the shipping carrier forefront of things. But they're still operating. We've seen slight delays in check-in times, but anything on the Canadian forefront has been fine. But a lot of our businesses sell to the US, and even though they're falling in these essential categories, they're seeing huge delays on the check-in times. So the businesses that fall under the grocery categories, the baby, the pet supplies, they'll send it in, but they're still seeing check-in times, unless it's the utmost priority on the US forefront, really long check-in times. But on the Canadian forefront, everything is still okay. But I think as the week or two go on, it's just, we're getting a lot of demand in terms of like questions, concerns, and trying to get their stock there as fast as possible. And because of that, I think it's just going to be more of a rolling effect that by the end of this week, early next week, things are really going to start to play out in terms of the expected timeline start to delay.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of questions about alternatives and how you can reduce your kind of dependency on Amazon. I know you're going to be picking a bunch of these topics and answering these questions a little bit later, so I'm going to hold those on if you don't mind, Steve.
Sure.
Pratishta just asked, is your cross-border lane to the US still active?
Yeah. So as of now, all of our cross-border lanes to the US are still operating at full capacity. They've mentioned, and we work with several cross-border carriers that kind of do the injections into the States under Section 321, which is just, it's a limited lane that we use to get products across customs and duties free. But for those, all the businesses, they're still operating. They fall under necessity businesses because they are carriers. What we're seeing though is they're starting to qualify what necessity goods are and making sure those are getting across faster than other ones. So the drawers and the desks, just they're just not getting priority access across the border versus grocery, any sort of like medical masks or gowns. Those are still getting across faster, but all the cross-border lanes are still operating at full capacity. But because of the US restrictions, it's just causing some hiccups.
Oh, and the slides take us right into Salman's question,
Perfect.
which is, can you please repeat the categories that fall under essential? So I think we've done a good job here. So just before you get into this slide, Amelie, you're seeing, give us a little bit of your input in terms of the customers that you guys work with and some of the feedback you're getting from them.
Yeah, so with the bulk of our clients, of our e-commerce clients that were using the global currency account that we have, are selling on Amazon. So basically, and I'll tell you guys a bit more about it later. But basically, we have can give our clients the equivalent of a local bank account in the U.S. because that's what Amazon required to pay clients in U.S. dollars. And so these virtual accounts, they already work with all other marketplaces. They can be linked to marketplaces and or payment gateways. So you can currently with those accounts receive funds from Shopify, from eBay, from PayPal, from Stripe. So that part of the alternatives is kind of covered. So if our clients are looking to diversify on other marketplaces, we're equipped to help. What we wanted to do is to look for partners to be able to help our clients who were doing FBA, and that's why the eShipper partnership was important, right? Because we have those clients on the front line. They're no longer able to get their products to Amazon. I mean, that means the payments won't come into their account. So we need to be able to help them, and so that's why the partnership is important.
Good,
Amelie,
good. And I think this, go on.
I was going to ask Amelie, from a holding of currencies for these Amazon businesses, have you seen any sort of delays of the time that they're releasing? I know some businesses get same day injections into their account versus the 2 week, which is the norm. What does that look like from your guys' end? Has there been any delays, and especially with the cross-border end of things too?
No. I spoke to the head of our corporate desk this morning, and there was no complaints with regards to that. Most sellers do get paid every 2 weeks. There are ways that they can get paid every day. So those bigger sellers that are interested in just churning out their inventory faster, we have a partnership with Payability where they can get their disbursement every day. But no, there hasn't been any changes in Amazon finance arm, if you want.
So I know I was speaking to one of your largest clients, Amelie, who's selling out of Germany and UK. And the EU is similar to the US. They've completely suspended shipments coming in, and he was selling electronic goods and things like that. So for somebody like that, what are you seeing their changes are in behavior? Are they selling more on others? Are they more on e-commerce? Like, how do they diversify their business quickly through looking and working with OFX?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what was the outcome with that specific client. That's what we're discussing here. But I think that probably going. I mean, if you already have such a well-established business, you probably have the resources to diversify on a different marketplace, right? So I think that's what I would do if you already have your audience ready in Europe. I mean, just get get on and get your product on a different platform, and probably to go just with Shopify or eBay, where if you've built your brand already to that place, then probably to go on Shopify and have your own website is a good alternative.
Good, and we'll talk about those. So it's a
Yeah.
good tester for you. But let's go back up the slide deck and kind of talk through some of the essential products and necessity categories that have been set up by Amazon, because I know there was a specific question about that, and I think you've also got some really good points here about diversifying to multiple channels. So let's jump into that, Blair.
Yeah, absolutely. So you see on the left-hand side, that's just essentially the highlight statement that Amazon released last Monday, that essentially shocked the world on the Amazon space of things. On if you didn't fall into this category, essentially you have to find another way to fulfill your products in the meantime. So there's been a lot of, I think, just miscommunications and alignment of what this list meant, because this is kind of the know-all to end-all situation of what you can sell and not sell. So I think some of the rumors around it were that if you don't sell in these categories, then essentially you can't do anything on Amazon, which it isn't the case. What this list essentially means is, at least for that 14 days, and which should end on April 5th, is you just can't send anything externally of this list into Amazon's fulfillment centers. And how you can actually test this, if you guys are Amazon sellers, is inside of your Seller Central, you can try to create a shipment in, and Amazon very clearly will just not allow it. They'll just block the shipment and say, sorry, this doesn't fall under one of the categories. Unfortunately, you're going to have to hold off. And that's where you can transition into your other alternatives of essentially maybe fulfilling orders yourself, looking into the other marketplaces. But you'll notice they didn't dive any deeper in terms of like what inside baby products are you able to sell. So because of that, it's being kind of a testament of a lot of our businesses that are in the baby category, especially on like the private label forefront. 90% of their products may get through, but maybe their baby caddy wasn't, and it wasn't getting approved. So it was very strange in terms of exactly what you can send in. But anyone outside of these 6 categories are essentially transitioning over to the fulfillment by merchant model in the meantime, to make sure that at least they are still fulfilling orders in the meantime. Because what happens is, if Amazon can't fulfill those orders, the second you run out of stock, it's basically lights out. Yep. So we're seeing a lot of these larger businesses send it to fulfillment centers, very similar to yours and e-shippers. But along with that, they're sending to their garages. They have their kids at home and their family helping them out, trying to prepare shipments too. So we've seen photos and videos around the board of entire homes basically being distribution centers for the meantime. So it kind of shows the testament of what people need to do to kind of roll up their sleeves and get back down to the foundation of what the Amazon business was for them. But it's really much ranging for every single one of these businesses. And I saw a really good question in terms of especially the like price gouging issues. So one of our larger businesses, they sell in the medical supply area on Amazon.ca and .com. And because of this list, you would assume everything is okay and that their business were completely operating on Amazon and they were doing okay. But as of a few days ago, all their listings were essentially suspended and deactivated. Amazon thought that they might have been price gouging, or that they weren't actually qualified to sell in these categories, because Amazon's making it very difficult to sell even face masks and hand sanitizers. It's not an easy game to just sell anymore. So even the larger guys that are qualified to sell in these categories, they're still seeing the effects of how Amazon's kind of calling the shots. And essentially, I think it was around 50 to 60% of their listings are completely deactivated, even though they're selling in the medical supplies that are in top tier necessity goods right now. So even them at the highest level, they're scrambling to figure out their business as well. So we're seeing it everything from these brand new small businesses all the way to the gigantic trying to figure out what to do next on Amazon. And that's why the fulfilled by merchant or diversifying your channels is becoming such a lucrative opportunity now. And everyone's really asking questions, trying to figure it out.
And I wanna jump in here really quickly. So there's a couple of things that you really touched on that are important. First and foremost, the price gouging. So if people are changing their pricing or they're seen as price gouging, they could immediately be suspended. I know AMZ has a service that allows, these professional services that you offer, where you can actually help with activating accounts that have been suspended, making sure that the product description and the way you've put your pricing together is correct. So there's a lot of resources available from an AMZ prep perspective that these type of clients can actually use and understand. A lot of questions are coming in from clients about what products are seen as necessity, and if they feel it's necessity but Amazon doesn't feel it's necessity. I think these are great areas to be able to say that, if clients are out there and there is a little bit of confusion and they're unsure as to what they can do or how they should go about it, do reach out to Blair directly. His team with a bunch of different sellers and merchants that are experts in Amazon will be able to help you bring a lot of these things back to reality. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you post this interview or this Facebook Live, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so I'll add and make sure we have some comment there. But it's Blair at amzprepcanada.ca. You should see it on the banner section below.
Okay.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, we're basically just
Yeah,
on
because
hands deck trying to figure everything out for them.
I know you're currently helping that specific client you just mentioned to activate their account and kind of
Yeah,
looking and doing some research into why they were shut down and what can be done. So it's important that our viewers do understand that there is a lot of help out there, and you guys are what you would say the experts in this industry, and you know exactly how to get around and ensure that these accounts are within the boundaries that they're supposed to be in.
exactly.
So let's jump into the reality of this conversation. I mean, you've talked a little bit about Amazon and what's going on in the industry and the marketplace and so on and so forth. Let's talk about how these sellers who have real lives and real businesses can actually get out and diversify. So one of the things you talked about was FBM. I know we have a whole slide on that. Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about FBM, what it means, how they can kind of change their status on Amazon, and then above and beyond that, what support they can get from services like eShipper Plus, eShipper, AMZ Prep, and where all of these different businesses can come in and really support them if they were to make the adjustment from FBA to FBM.
Yeah. So when we were brainstorming MT, and for all the listeners, we had 3-tier recommendations, and we'll go through them one by one. One of those was the fulfilled by merchant model. Secondly was the diversifications of products, which for a lot of brands and businesses may be a very lucrative opportunity right now. And then the third was diversification along different marketplaces and channels, including the eBay, the Walmarts, the Shopify. So I want to be sure that we touch on all three. But you'll see the aura around the entire 3 solutions that we're really just seeing a lot of sellers do, and that we're seeing front hand of their execution is diversification, which I think is the key word here. So, and I think the norm around diversification means that you have to just automatically restart and sell in a whole different marketplace or start a new business. It can be as simple as just switching your fulfillment model in terms of it was Amazon and now maybe it's a fulfillment center, or you guys are doing it yourself, or just even creating your own simple website. We're seeing a lot of we're very much active in these smaller Facebook groups, and some of them are just really just showing you exactly how to create your Shopify website so you can just get things up and going. But for anyone who wasn't in to chime in on exactly what fulfilled by merchant is that essentially it's just there's 2 models for fulfilling on Amazon: fulfilled by Amazon, FBA, and then there's fulfilled by merchant. So essentially when an order comes in through Amazon's platform, if it's FBA, the order will flow through to an Amazon warehouse and they will do the fulfillment for you. Fulfilled by merchant just means that when an order comes in, it just goes to your own warehouse or your own home in your own
Okay.
central, and then you're manually fulfilling the order yourself.
How do you change? Is there some mechanism that you have to go in and change? Like I know you've got easily convert from FBA to FBM here.
Yeah, there's this huge stigma around that. It's the hardest change, and that these businesses aren't gonna be able to do it because it's going to take weeks and weeks. On your Amazon account, it's as simple as clicking a button. So right when you get in, you can essentially just click fulfill by merchant depending on what listings. So even when you're inside of Amazon, it doesn't mean that your entire business has to switch to a whole different model and everything's changing and you don't really know what to do. It's as simple as you can try a couple of your listings that may be in
Oh, so
jeopardy.
you can. Okay. So
Yeah,
you can unique some of your listings rather than all of them at once.
exactly. So for the businesses
Okay.
that have some sort of suspension appeals, we're trying to get more creative and just change those ones to fulfill by merchant. So it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that your entire catalog of 100 products have to change to fulfill by merchant, but you can
Yeah.
slowly start picking them off one by one. And there's tons of benefits of the fulfill by merchant, especially right now. So as a lot of the news is rising, especially on the last mile that's going to the customers, if any of the watchers or if you guys yourself, Emily and MT, have ordered anything off Amazon over the past week, the shipping times is absolutely insane. We're looking on getting, it was something simple. I think it was like chapstick or something like that, but it was not under the Prime account and it was around 28-day delivery time.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, so it's these end customers that if they don't have an actual Prime account, Amazon is basically saying, we'll deal with it, but it's going to take a really long time. Now, if you're
So
Prime,
there's a
go ahead,
here.
MT.
Yeah. What if it is Prime?
So yeah, so if it's Prime, it's not the 1 to 2 day that would average be. Usually if I order something right now, it's going to come tomorrow afternoon to the warehouse. But what we're seeing now is anywhere from 5 to 10 days. And that's continued to increase. So it's 5 to 10 days versus 30 days, which essentially could be a different world by the time these 30 days pass. So because of this, you can see even on Amazon's frontline, they're still prioritizing Prime accounts on what the end customers are looking at. But if they don't even have a Prime membership, even if you're FBA, you're still looking at anywhere from 15 to 30-day delivery time. So that's why the fulfill by merchant model becomes such a
Let's
good
jump
idea.
into some of these questions here. So I know Ryan has actually commented twice, and I really like his comments because he's kind of putting a little bit of a bombshell out there. So he said FBM costs may not work for your products, and Amazon does not allow a large enough payout for FBM shipping. So let's start with the first one. I think I can jump in and answer that question. So Ryan, you're absolutely correct. I think depending on where your warehouse is or if you're shipping out of your home, not only do you have to worry about the cost of shipping, but you also have to worry about the transit times in shipping, right? And I think when you talk about costs, there's an additional cost in, the time that you have to spend to pick and pack and get things out. But I think in essence, the idea is, do you want to keep the business moving or not? And I actually spoke to a really interesting entrepreneur yesterday who said, at this period for the next few weeks, it's really about keeping the brand alive and making sure that whether Amazon fulfills or doesn't fulfill, my customers don't feel like I've left them alone. So in some cases, he was more than happy to kind of just hit his minimum or even just break even. But as long as the business continued and he was getting his reviews in and everything else, that was the main part of it. Touch on the other one, which said Amazon does not allow a large enough payout for FBM shipping. Blair, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So Amazon does not allow a large enough payout for FBM shipping. So
I'm guessing he's probably talking a little bit about the amount of percentage they take from the
The
sale and
margin.
things like that.
Yeah. And I think what Kem just commented just now kind of sheds light into the best opportunities for FBM. So if you're like a lot of these businesses that you can't afford the margin, it's Amazon is a margin game at the end of it. And if you're not under a certain weight and dims, sometimes it just won't make sense for you to go FBM. But yeah, MT, we're seeing the same businesses of they are losing $1, a lot of these, but because they're the more private label, they're the brands, they're willing to essentially bite their tongue and take it at either a break even, smaller margin, or completely at a loss, just to make sure that those end consumers still kind of are still loyal to their brand because they went to Amazon and they're with Amazon. But yeah, as Ryan said, the essential what happens is if it's fulfilled by merchant, they essentially will just take a percentage, but the shipping ends up being significantly more, just given on depending where your customer is located. So if it's someone in the area where me and Imti are located, and Amelie as well, is in the Toronto area, the shipping is going to be very cheap. But if your customer is in Nunavut or is in Nova Scotia, it's a little bit of a price deterrence that you're going to have to figure out. So that's usually the biggest deterrence that comes with the fulfilled by merchant is the range in shipping costs. I know Imti, there's a couple creative ways that you can probably chime in, but that's usually the biggest issue people have if they have a product over a pound or two. For them, it's not even worth going for. Let FBA just because they've built on economies of scale to make it as cheap as possible. Where individuals at their home, for example, they can't get a good enough rate with UPS to kind of leverage the benefits that could come with fulfilling yourself.
Question, guys, because everybody's in the same boat now, and basically, if you don't have a necessity to sell, you won't be able to go through FBA. Do you think that merchants can just build in a bit more margin in their price to account for that FBM now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think because of the ecosystem and the climate right now, you can probably increase slightly, but it's so the stability of even like the sellers doing medical supplies, they're putting their pricing up $1 or $2, and Amazon's flagging it for price gouging.
Really?
So because of this, it's a shaky environment, and because of that, it's causing a little bit of disparity in terms of what you should be able to increase the price on. But I agree, finding creative ways to at least even just put it up enough to cover your margin, or the alternative way is that having your end customer pay for the shipping as well.
Pay for
So
shipping.
on Amazon,
Exactly.
they can pay for the shipping,
Yeah.
so you can keep your price significantly low. We saw like one of our clients that does medical products. They're doing more of like these hand gloves and these different types of gowns. Their price on Amazon's very low, but then they were charging $60 to $70 for shipping. So all their margin, and that was their way to kind of get away from the price gouging situation, was they were right in line with their actual cost with everything else on the first page. But when it came to their shipping, they said, sure, but you essentially have to pay your $70 shipping, which
I remember this was something that was on eBay a long time ago as well. A lot of people would sell stuff for free, or they would sell stuff for a penny, but then the shipping would be really high, and that's where they made their margin. So one thing I wanna jump in and say is that, you know, from an FBM perspective, I just spoke to a client of ours who she's huge on FBA. Actually, most of her product sits in the US. She's an FBA customer in the US, and she has about 2,000 units already in FBA. She sells seeding products, and she's the only person in the industry that sells it in the way she does. She has a whole patent, and she's rocking that industry. Now, believe it or not, you know, we're in that season right now, right? We're coming up to spring and the summer where people actually get out and start planting and so on and so forth. I'm at home. I have a nice garden. I want to start gardening. I'm in quarantine. What else am I going to do, right? So she's exploding right now in sales, and they've actually picked her up to be on a TV show in early April. And her biggest worry is that she thinks she's going to get about 6,000 sales. Now, her margins are extremely low. So she said, you know, it costs me around $10 USD all in to get my product in my customer's hands. So the percentages that Amazon takes, plus getting it across the border, plus the shipping charges and everything else. And she said, I need you to work with me on this because my margins are not that high, but I have 6,000 orders. And this is like one of the biggest seasons for me. So I need your help. And I gave her like 6 or 7 different alternatives in order to be able to get her product out. So come over to us and ask questions. You know, I think the most important thing during this time, and the reason that we've put this FBA session out today, is that you get the opportunity to understand that there are partners out there that have, you know, so many different means of doing it. And I'll give you 2 examples that I gave her. So the first thing she was unsure about, which is at this time of the year, you know, with COVID-19 taking so much of TV time and news, I'm not sure if that TV show is actually going to be played, and I don't want to send 6,000 shipments to you to pick and pack if I don't have to. And I was saying to her that, you know, don't worry about all of that. For now, you can send me 3,000, for example. And if it goes ahead, at least I have half of your products here to start fulfilling, and you can send the other 3,000 in the next day. Now she lives in BC, so it's going to take about 4 to 5 days for her product to get here. And I said to her, do you sell on Amazon Canada? And she said, yes. So I said, look, Brampton has about 3 to 4 different fulfillment centers anyway. if I don't end up using your product and the show doesn't go ahead, I can still get them out to an FBA center in the area, and that way you haven't wasted your product, and I can hold your product in inventory for a longer time at a cheaper cost. So some of the things that we're doing in the industry today is that, number one, we are trying to create special pricing for new customers who are kind of very reactive to what's going on with the FBA world. But more importantly, we want to give you, 2, 3, 4 different choices of how you can play the game and kind of still sustain a business. Now, the funniest thing she said to me is, I have 2 teenagers at home, and I have a lot of space, so I'm just going to start getting them to do some of the work. And I said, you know what, if that works for you, then absolutely go for it. So she said, I do 80 orders a day today, so they're already busy enough doing that. So if I have 6,000, I don't think they can manage that. So I said, we're here to help you. Let's see how time goes. And we've provided her with some pricing. But I think the biggest thing for her was, she's an FBA US account, has no idea how to go about this. And we really are going to give her a few different ways and choices in order for her to be able to get her product out. So
Yeah.
do not feel estranged to reaching out to organizations like ours.
Yeah.
I want to spend very, very quick time. I know we're running out of time, and there's so many great things coming out of this session. Just on, if I don't want to go FBM. So let's say, for example, I go from FBA to FBM, and you've
Sure.
given me a very quick understanding of how I can do this. Perhaps with the admins on the group, we can create a quick video and share it with the guys as to how you can go from FBA to FBM on your Amazon store. But let's say, for example, I do go on FBM, and I'm not 100% sure I'm going to get the same exposure that I was getting on FBA. What else can I do? Can I convert from Amazon to Shopify? Can I convert from Amazon to another marketplace or another platform? And how easy is it to do that?
Yeah, and because I think it's a big thing, especially during these times, that especially on the fulfilled by merchant versus fulfilled by Amazon. Obviously, Amazon prioritizes, if you have it in their fulfillment centers, they prioritize your guys' listings. So because of this, not only from a margin standpoint of it may just not make sense for my products, it's, hey, I'm not going to get the same exposure as a regular business that's in the Amazon FBA center that's getting this prime. So as it is true, because of the climate right now, we're seeing at least the curve start to flatten out in terms of the competitive edge that Prime did offer a month ago when everything was completely different. It's not the same competitive edge as it is now. So in a sense, yes, the exposure is different, but you have to think that a lot of these other businesses that you're competing with that were Prime and you guys were Prime, you guys are on the exact same playing field. So it's not that they now have the option to go Prime and you guys don't. It's your FBM to FBM. It's exposure to exposure. And you'll see a lot of the times too, like your shipping time is FBM, whether that's from your own house to keep costs down or from a fulfillment center, it ends up being usually a faster timeline than what Amazon is offering. Because if you look at an end consumer purchasing on Amazon and it's a 30-day delivery, but your FBM listing can do it in 3 to 6 days, or even faster if it's somewhere in the US going seller fulfilled Prime options, you're still competing at the highest level. And I think that's a huge norm that changes, that a lot of people are nervous that it's just not going to be apples to apples, but because of the circumstances, people have got a little bit away from it.
And a quick question for you here. Do you think people are getting more of an advantage with not having all the, I would say, expertise in listing and keywords and so on and so forth? When they're listing on Prime, they're kind of riding the wave of Prime because they're paying a little bit more to be on Prime. So Amazon is listing your product regardless because you're just doing something that's making them more money. Now I'm going in FBM. I actually need to clean up home, and I really need to figure out what my keywords look like, how my listing looks, my review, my photography, so on and so forth. So can you help with that? If I was somebody who wanted to go from FBA to FBM, can you actually help with that? And how do I go about doing that if I wanted to kind of reach out to you and say, hey, how good is my current listing and what can you do to improve it?
Yeah. Essentially, we've been essentially offering free audits for a lot of these businesses, because a lot of them, when you're transitioning from FBA to FBM, not too much is really changing. And I think it's the end all to know all, that your entire business is flipped upside down. But transition to FBA to FBM, it's really not that steep of a curve. You're only changing your fulfillment method. everything else is staying completely the same. So yeah, for these businesses, we've been trying to get more creative in terms of laying out the playing field. So if they were riding the wave of FBA and the prime benefit, they've been getting a little bit more creative with it. But yeah, we're even with the other businesses of trying to ask like whether or not they're falling in necessity categories. Some of the sellers we work with, they're sending us just full CSVs and being, hey, can you guys try to figure this out? And we're basically playing a scavenger hunt, trying to figure out what's on a necessity, what isn't, because what you think is a necessity might not be the same. And I think so. Ken also mentioned a suggestion there: adjust your shipping and handling times on each item to make sure you can get it to the customers on time. Yeah, that's a really good point, Ken. I think as the timelines are going to really extend, and especially with the volatility that you can probably measure exactly how long each shipping carrier is going to take given your guys' business model. Making sure that at least on the listing you can give a real good timeline. I think expectations for a lot of customers are out the door. If their prime's going 5 to 9 days, they aren't expecting anything anytime soon. I know my mom, she ordered like a shirt for my dad's birthday. And she thought she was getting it tomorrow, which was his birthday, and it's supposed to come like April 24th. So because of this, it's like there's huge gaps that they have to get creative with. But Ken, good point that if you can adjust it accordingly, then at least it gives the customer an idea, because the gaps in terms of shipping times are through the roof.
We have another question here from Ryan. Can you make a couple of points on sponsored products versus sponsored brands and the pros and cons of each?
Yeah. So, and everything on the marketing forefront of Amazon, it's a whole different world. And we have a couple of the guys in the office that really smash this out, that can really hammer down these details. But everything on what I understand from the sponsored products end of things, everything is changing right now in terms of the Amazon forefront. People that were running marketing right now, especially with Prime basically shutting down, it's just not playing to the same benefit. So even like a lot of our businesses run just general PPC, which is just the marketing forefront on Amazon. And they're doing full sponsored products and just getting their presence and their listings to the front page. A lot of these businesses are even just completely shutting it down because they don't know when their next stock's going to arrive. They don't know how fast it's selling. And the huge spikes on Amazon right now, they don't even need to do marketing, which is the reason why Amazon hired an extra 100,000 individuals. Versus sponsored brands, what you can do on Amazon is essentially you can register your brand. So if you have your brand registry, you can basically apply on Amazon, and it just gives you a unique advantage on Amazon. It allows you to take advantage of different types of marketing strategies, build out a full storefront on Amazon, very similar to what it may look like on your website. So a lot of brands are transitioning to this, but essentially it just provides a unique advantage, and it can also help. What happens is a lot of third-party sellers might end up selling on your guys' listings. So these actual brand registered companies on Amazon, essentially what they can do is make sure that their products are gated. Third-party sellers aren't able to sell their products as easily. You can create full storefronts that look very much like how your brand should be represented, where just general sellers don't have all these benefits. So it's just kind of one more layer that a lot of these businesses use if they have an actual brand on Amazon that is either a private label or their own individual business. But it's a good transition into Shopify, because like what happens on the sponsored brand, the actual product page, is it looks almost exactly like their website. So it's a very cool individual thing that if you have a brand and you can kind of represent yourself, it gives a little bit more advantage. But from what we're seeing on the marketing forefront, a lot of people are shutting down the things because they don't need to push their products any more than they usually have to, because everything's it's just so volatile right now that there's enough volume coming in that a lot of them are either completely putting it on standstill until sometime in April, or at least they're starting to cut down their cost.
That's really good advice, actually. So I think we're gonna need another session to go over a lot of these different areas of Amazon. I think you've got so many different types of questions coming up regarding the alternatives and so on and so forth. And I know Emily's been sitting there so nicely and patiently giving us smiles every 2 minutes. So I think it's really important we bring her into the conversation, and maybe you can start, Emily, just by kind of giving us a little bit of an overview of what you're seeing in the market yourself, and then maybe touch a little bit on OFX and what's going on in terms of your world, and how our listeners and viewers can really get the most out of their money. Currency is a big thing in the Amazon world as well as e-com, and perhaps you can touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, well, that's it. With COVID, you see the currencies are going really all over the place, and the sellers are, a lot of them are sourcing abroad and are selling abroad, and so to cover that money topic with it, we thought was quite important. So I just want to give you a quick overview of OFX and why we're seeing that big uptake in and the demand for our service right now. Just let you know a little bit about the global currency account, which is that product specific for e-commerce and which can help you expand if that's what you choose to do right now, expand internationally. And the interesting part is really the currency outlook and just looking at how the currencies have been moving against each other right now. And just to close with the opportunities that these currency moves are pointing towards. I think, can you switch to the second slide, please? Thank you. So we are an online money transfer provider. We were founded in Australia in '98, and just to give you some perspective, over that 20-year history, there's been obviously a lot of economic turmoil, but this month is where we've seen the biggest uptake in demand for our service ever. And it just says that it's really important for people to be able to move their money around the world to keep their business going,
Mm,
and that's what we do. So our value prop is very simple, right? We have a single value proposition, and it's just to help people make international payments at a better exchange rate compared to the banks. And the way that we deliver on that is through a digital transactional platform coupled with human support. So we have teams of experts in 7 offices around the world that are there to help over the phone 24/7 for clients to book in their trades. And with the uncertainty as well that we're seeing right now, I think that to know that you're dealing with a robust company is kind of important. So I just wanted to point out some of the credentials. We've transferred more than 150 billion over those 20 years, servicing 1 million clients, private clients and businesses. We're a privately listed, privately traded company on the Australian Stock Exchange, and we work with major bank across the world with whom we have bank accounts. So in Canada, for example, we work with RBC, with BMO. In the US, we work with Bank of New York Mellon, Bank of America, with Barclays in Europe. And so this is all kind of a very solid network of banking relationships. I think you can go
just
to, yeah,
just before you go any forward,
yeah.
I want to just let people know, first and foremost, at I believe 1:31 p.m. on the comment section, there is a URL for the PDF version of today's slides. So
Hmm.
if you miss anything, it's available there. Um, we also have Blair's contact details, and I'm going to have them add your contact details in there too, Amelie. I believe that Asim and the team were working on a specific promo code that sellers and viewers can use during this time to potentially get a better rate through this relationship of
Yeah,
OFX and eShipper. So we'll
yeah,
add a few of those in the comment section. So please look out for those later. And most importantly, Emily, I think from my perspective, what's
yeah.
really, really important to the viewers is make it real for us. So how does, give us a couple of real examples of where people are using OFX. You said, in the last month, it's being used a lot more. Give us a few examples of how we can use our money better. I hate currency, to be honest, and I hate changing money, and it's
Trust me.
so difficult to keep on top of everything. So how do you make it simple to do all of that? And what is your team like? How many people do you have here in Canada that I can pick
Yeah,
up the phone to or send an email to?
yeah.
How do I get in touch with you and really learn and educate myself on how to make my money go further?
I will make it real for you. No, so we have a team of 45 people in Toronto, about 10 people that are looking after our corporate clients, and a good number of that are e-commerce sellers. And the product that we have for that, I assume you can switch to the next slide. As I was referring to earlier, is that global currency account. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, if I'm a Canadian seller and I want to sell on a marketplace internationally, I need to have the equivalent of a local bank account in those foreign markets. And so you can go with, well, in the US for a Canadian, you can get a bank account. So you can have a BMO Harris, RBC Georgia, or TD Cross Border bank account, but the exchange rate isn't great and it's just not that easy to get, right? So that's the solution that we have. We give you the equivalent of a local bank account. They're called virtual accounts, and we can give you that in all major markets. So we can give you one in US dollar, in euros, in pounds, in Australian dollars, in Canadian dollars if you're American as well. And that's it. And so that's a recipient bowl to be able to get paid by the marketplace or by the payment gateway. We cover all major marketplaces, all major payment gateways. And so, yeah, so you go into your seller central profile in the recipient bank account detail. That's where you would put your new virtual account for the currency you're looking to receive. And that just gives you more control. It just gives you more control on the exchange rate, but actually it's more control on your margin and the profit that you're bringing back home, and that you can reinvest, right? So it's very important. The margin that we charge on the exchange rate is about 0.75%. Amazon charges still 3.75%. So it's a three.
Whoa.
So it's a 3% difference in the profit that you bring back home. Now, what you do with it? Do you reinvest it in inventory purchases, or do you just pay yourself? That's up to you. But it's about 3% the savings.
Yeah, a lot of our businesses
Yeah.
end up using OFX too. So MT,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, probably around, I'd say 70 to 80% of all the businesses we work with,
Yeah.
they use OFX, because a lot of the businesses we work with are like they're Canadians that sell on the .com market. So them bringing back $100,000, for example, it's an absolute game changer, especially with the volatile market. So and Amelie, for example, so if I was bringing back, let's say Amazon paid us out $100,000.
Yep.
We're a booming business right now. Let's say, what does that number look like versus if Amazon, because we've worked with individuals that they just get it sent to their Amazon account because they just don't even know the numbers, versus using the OFX US account and then transferring it back at a better time.
Yeah, so it's so the margin that we take is on the real exchange rate. It's not exactly on the nominal amount, but it's kind of close to it anyways. Whoops.
Before you answer that and carry on, Amelie, I just want to let the viewers know it is past 2 o'clock. But if Blair and Amelie, if you've both got a little bit of time, we can finish off over time. I'm okay to stay on if you guys are okay to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blair, I know you charge a lot of money to be on these type of events, so I'm hoping you can give me a good discount on this.
Well, go see the invoice come in and you can make that call. But I think
well, you would save more than $2,000 on that.
On $2,000.
Yeah. It's about from $3,000 to what we would charge you is about on $100,000 transfer. We would charge, about $750, and not like 2,075.
Which I think it's these smaller numbers that a lot of these businesses don't account for. Like whether that's in returns.
Well, it's just because
changes, right?
It's one of the so many things that you got to figure out, right? Your banking, and Amazon does offer the service, so you can start with them handling conversion for you. But at a certain point in running your business, I think it's one of the things that you wanna improve, and that's why it's been working well for us in North America. It's really the savings and the ease of setup, and that's what people are looking for now, I think. And just to add, that's it to the opportunity. What I thought was really interesting when I looked at that currency review, Asim, if you can go to the third slide. I just wanted to go and through the major currencies right now, and how COVID is affecting all of them actually, and what types of opportunities it's creating for the sellers. So COVID has become the main influencer on currencies at this stage, but the way that currencies are set, right, it's a complex mechanism. And before COVID, there used to be there were economic events that were important to us, and so these economic events plus COVID are acting together to set currencies. But the first takeaway, I think, is that the US dollar is really king right now. So investors across the world are just moving to that safe haven currency, and what it means is that essentially the global community of investors are confident that the American economy is going to rebound from the crisis. And so if you're selling on .com, over the past few months, it was about 132 Canadian dollars, and this morning it was at $132, $1.32, and this morning it's at $1.45. So if you bring it back home, it's about you're just gaining about 10% in purchasing power in
That's
Canada.
crazy. That's
Yeah,
so crazy, eh?
yeah.
Somebody asked here a good question. How is OFX able to offer superior exchange rates compared to the banks?
Yeah, it's really easy. So we work with the banks, but they allow us to beat them on one service for an exchange because of the volume of transfers that we bring to the books. So we transfer about 20 billion per year, and and for that money to go through bank rails, it has value. They want it to go. So essentially, they give us institutional rates, which we can then pass on to consumers.
And this is more about the commissions that banks charge compared to the actual foreign exchange rate conversion, correct?
Well, the commission is kind of the margin. So on all foreign exchange transactions, there are two types of costs that you can be charged. There's transaction fees and there's the margin on the real exchange rate. Transaction fees are those international wire fees, incoming and outbound that you get. Usually they are between 15 to $80. And so we eliminate that, and so you're just left with the margin on the real exchange rate. Now, if you make a small transfer, the transaction fees can be annoying, but usually on a bigger transfer, the real difference is seen in the margin on the real exchange rate. And with the banks, there's not a lot of transparency on that because the real exchange rate that fluctuates by the second, and when you go to the bank, they kind of use a rate that is highly cushioned for half the day. So you don't know the rate that you're being marked up on, if you want. So with OFX, you get the live exchange rate, which fluctuates by the second, and your margin is always fixed on that exchange rate.
That's really helpful. That's
Yeah,
really helpful. And I'm guessing that these things that you're talking about from a currency perspective,
yeah,
whether it's USD, Euro, GBP,
yeah,
Australian dollar, these completely affect people who are selling on other marketplaces or online shopping carts like Shopify and so on. So when it comes to, I'm selling, let's say t-shirts
yeah,
or apparel or shoes or whatever online,
yeah,
and I want to sell to somebody in the UK, I can actually accept GBP payments
yeah,
using OFX.
yeah.
And that puts me in a position of much more power because they understand their currency much better than they would understand the Canadian currency. Instead of having to go in and convert it and say, oh, this is now
Yeah,
going to cost me 16 pounds compared to, 25 or $28, so on and so forth. It
yeah.
makes it much more, what they say is that it culturally adjusts to their market, and it gives them that ability to think about, hey, I know exactly what my costs are. So it doesn't just help from the commission perspective, but it also allows people in different countries to see the cost in their own currency rather than our currency only.
Yeah, well, it depends on the platform that you're using, right? But if you're using a platform on which you can set the currency that you're selling in, then you should try to sell in the currency of the country where you're selling in to be more
Yeah.
competitive. That's the point. But if some marketplaces they will set that currency already for you. So, but in any case, you should want to be able to receive that currency of the foreign country.
Yeah, and I think what it does is I know so I used to live in the UK and I still do a lot of
Hmm.
shopping in the UK.
Yeah,
And the last time I tried to buy something from the UK, I had to go on PayPal and I had to pay,
yeah,
a high percentage of conversion to buy from my Canadian dollar account. And
yep,
like I said, I was like, I want this, I'm just gonna buy it. I really don't care how much it costs now, right?
yeah,
So it makes it so difficult for buyers like me who are trying to buy in different currencies and start to think about, can I get it cheaper if I do this, and can I get it
hmm,
cheaper because I still have a UK bank account. And I was like, shall I use my UK account instead? And I was like, you know what, at the end of the day, like, if I have something like OFX, it just makes it much more easier for my buyer, or for someone like me who was trying to buy, to see the currency and quickly make a decision and move on, right? I don't abandon the shopping cart or go away and think about it and then come back. um,
Well, that's the thing. So for the platform itself, so we are at a different side of the equation. So we're not between the end customer and the merchant. That would be
yeah,
the payment gateway. We are between the marketplace or the payment gateway and the seller. So to
yeah,
help them receive their funds.
receive the funds, yeah.
Yeah, that's it, to help them receive the funds. Depending if sellers are happy to get paid directly into their bank accounts, then that's something we can do. But so there's kind of two sides of the equation for payments for sellers, right? How do I accept payments from the end consumers, and then how do I move that money back into my own account? So we are in the part of where you move your money back into your own account.
Gotcha.
But then we integrate with all of the solutions to receive your end payment from your to receive your payment from your end customer.
I remember
So yeah.
Victor was mentioning this to me when he first met you, that he was spending 20 or $30,000 in
Yeah,
marketing on a weekly basis,
yeah,
and he would spend his money in USD. He would get paid by his customers in USD, but in order for him to actually use the USD to pay for the Facebook ads or the Google ads, he would have to convert to Canadian and then convert back to USD because he
yeah.
needed to
That's what.
bring it into his account and get it back out. So with a solution like OFX, I don't need to do any conversion.
No.
I already have my virtual bank account that I'm able to just use to pay my suppliers as well if I needed to.
Yeah, that's it. Those accounts were designed for online sellers, and so we knew that a lot of them had to pay suppliers in U.S. dollars. So from, let's say, if you have a U.S. dollar virtual account, you can pay your suppliers directly
Yeah.
from it.
And I think that's a game
So
changer
there's
for
no
people,
double
right? A lot
conversion.
of people don't know that these type
Yeah,
of services
yeah,
exist. So what they end up doing is they get paid in USD or they get paid in
yeah.
GBP. They convert to
Bring
Canadian
it
and
back,
lose
and
out,
then yeah,
I
and
used to
then
do
they
that.
lose
yeah,
again by converting back to
yeah.
USD to pay.
It's
So
it's the same
it's
case for suppliers and taxes. So
yeah,
you can pay your taxes directly from those virtual accounts.
Because it's really intimidating, like trying to get it. And I remember like when I was first selling, even like when I was selling on eBay, like eBay would inject the exact same thing. This was like 2016, but yeah, essentially like trying to create like an RBC account in the States. Like it's like the similar of that. It's next to impossible. And they don't want to deal with you, especially because like you have next to nothing down there. So if you just you try to call them and tell them you're opening up a small
Yeah.
eBay account, and then maybe like a couple $100 will go in. It's not the easiest conversation to have.
Yeah, well, we were happy with, well, like you guys, right? We're happy to help the guys that are starting. It's like the chicken in the end. You're starting your whatever Amazon, or you're starting your online business, and you need
Catch
to be able to
22.
receive those funds. And so we're happy to give that account from the start.
perfect, perfect.
Yeah, and if just to close, because I wanted to point out, so for those sellers in Canada, so right now the Canadian dollar is very weak. The Canadian dollar has always been tagged to the oil prices, and because manufacturing in the world in general is going very
Mm,
slow, the offer for oil should go down. OPEC is trying to limit that, but Russia is kind of
yeah.
keep on pumping oil, and so the oil of price is the price of oil is just down, and the CAD as well. But so what that means is that if as you're struggling to figure out ways to keep on your business going in the US, in Euro, or in Europe, or in the UK, those currencies, when you will bring them back home now, are just worth more, right? Again, the USD 132 to 145, the Euro was cruising at about 144. It's now 156.
Mm.
The pound is about equal, but so there is an opportunity right now, if you're selling in those markets,
But
and
I'm like,
To make a
yeah,
bit more.
yeah.
Mm.
So, does
yeah,
that mean then this is a crucial time? Because a lot of these, especially what we see on the Amazon forefront, is
yeah,
now people are starting to look into the nickels and dimes, just because
yeah,
every cent in margin is going to basically really matter over the next 2 months or so.
yeah.
Does that mean now is a really good time to get started on that? I'm assuming that
It is. It's just
if
if you were looking,
that's huge.
if COVID wasn't there, and that the USD would have gone from 132 to 145, every seller would be dancing, right? Every Canadian
Yeah.
seller would be dancing right now.
If it
So
wasn't
that's just
COVID,
what's
yeah,
happening, but plus the limitations. So you got to circumvent that to get to the reward,
double-edged
right?
sword. Hmm.
And the other point that I wanted to mention as well is, on the supplier payment side. So because the US dollar is strong right now, if you guys are holding US dollars, and you used to make your payments to your supplier in US dollars, it could
Mhm.
be a good time to get for an invoice in the local currency instead, because your
Mm.
shipment could end up being less expensive. So the USD has strengthened against the yuan, for example. So yeah, so
Got it.
to get the invoice in that other currency could just result in a cheaper shipment right now.
Hmm.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, I think
Pleasure.
you've really touched on some great points, and I think for me and Blair and all the audience out there, I think there's so much to learn when it comes to money and currency and making the most of it. I have this inside joke with my friends is that, the rich actually know how to like manage their money so much better. That's why they're rich. And the guys that are struggling and kind of just getting there and making ends meet are the guys that really need to learn about these tricks and when to do these type of things, because like Blair said, this is where the dollar goes 2 or 3 steps more for you, and this is where every nickel and dime really matters. So I think we will have to have another session to kind of expand on some of these things and kind of bring out some real life examples. Maybe you can invite one of your customers online, and we can do some sessions with them, because I think there's such good learning for your customers to give in terms of education of why they use FX and what they've been able to gain, where they're using it, and so on and so forth. So I want to touch a little bit on a couple of different things just as we end. Kamaldeep, I see your question here where you've mentioned compared to other options available on the market, does eShipper plan to expand partnerships with carriers such as Canada Post and USPS? We already have relationships, Kamaldeep. I would suggest reach out to your account manager if you have one. And if you don't, feel free to email us at sales@eshipper.com or support@eshipper.com. And I'll be able to support you with making sure that the services you're using are correct. It's a good segue just to give everybody and the viewers an update on what we're doing internally to really kind of help you get better shipping rates across the country and especially across the US. We have 2 phenomenal products coming out in the next few weeks, so keep an eye out on some of our marketing. If you're not part of our marketing emails, please do email in and we will set you up to ensure that you're up to date with some of the new services that we're coming out with. Let's touch a little bit on the e-commerce side. So we talked a lot about how FBA customers need to adapt and diversify. And if you're on FBA and your products are not being accepted and you're running out of inventory on the FBA side, can you do FBM instead? Absolutely. How easy is it? Blair touched on 4 points of how to get it done. I think it'll take you less than 5 minutes to do so. Reach out to us if you need any help to do so. Once you're on FBM, you can either fulfill from your home and use shipping rates from players like eShipper and others out there, or go and find your own account numbers through the carriers. Either way, you've got a bunch of different resources that you can use. I know from an FBM perspective, Amazon has relationships with USPS and I believe Canada Post as well, so you can print your labels directly from Amazon. So this is not just a pitch for me to be able to say you come to eShipper and see what we can do for you, but you have a bunch of resources out there. From my perspective, owning a warehousing and fulfillment business, we have tons of new customers coming to us who are basically doing exactly what Blair had alluded to earlier, which is I might be on FBA today and my customers were used to 1 to 2 day delivery, but now it's 14 days or more. So go to a fulfillment house like eShipper Plus and you probably get your product to your customer within 1 to 5 days instead of 14 days plus. So you have a lot of different options. Reach out to us. We can look at your costs that you're currently paying and try and see if we can get you to the similar place. I know Ryan had mentioned earlier that trying to sell at that rate and still making a margin is going to be very difficult. Let us do that level of free consultancy for you and give you some options. eShip is an online platform, so even if you were to do your fulfillment at home, you can still use the platform to create your labels and get your shipments out. And I think that is key. We also have relationships with warehouses across the country, so we have the ability to try and still get you a 2 to 3 day transit time across Canada, which is the largest landmass in the world. So that is in itself such a difficult task. But even getting it into the US, we have some phenomenal partnerships that will allow us to have a 3 day timeline or a 5 day timeline. So you do have options.
Imti, I was going to ask on that. So from what you guys are seeing, because we never really touched fully on it, and you probably have better context, but from just like general shipping, like, are you seeing any sort of delays? Because you mentioned
absolutely.
Are the UPS and the Canada Post and the USPS, are they clear sailing? What are you guys seeing on your end?
So what we're seeing is a couple of different things. So Canada Post has removed its guaranteed service deliveries on ground shipments. UPS has started to put more shipments into containers and truckloads, just like they did when Canada Post went on strike. So they're kind of a little bit backlogged. Every carrier has told us that services are normal for now, but things are changing on a day-to-day basis. We had an update from DHL Express today. We've had an update from DHL eCommerce that has told us shipments going into China have been suspended. So there are different changes coming in on a day-to-day basis, but I think the government has invested and is working very, very hard to keep the logistic services open, because this is the heartbeat of our country and our economy. And more importantly, I'm having my groceries delivered to me because I don't want to get out the house, because the government tells me do not step out if you don't have to. So I'm trying every single method I can to have things delivered to me and shop online. So, there has to be some reciprocation from the services that allow us to do that, to be able to be in full service. And I think everybody is working extremely hard to do that. So yes, we are seeing a few delays, and we will probably see a few more down the line. Due to just coming out of Q4, which was the busiest time in the year, already have the ability to scale to what we're seeing today. And I'm seeing numbers very close to what I saw in October and November during Black Friday and so on. So on my platform today, we're seeing the same level of throughput from a customer base in terms of shipments coming in. And so the carriers have to adapt to kind of working with what they were working during Black Friday and so on and so forth. But having said that, you're also seeing that, employees in Amazon centers are coming up with positive tests on COVID-19. You're seeing delivery drivers kind of really, really anxious about what they're touching and who they're going to be seeing at the front door. So we have to be human as well. There is a whole element of being realistic as to what is possible and what we can get through. But at the same time, we are staying very close to the surface when it comes to updates. And we've created a specific landing page. There's not many people out there that are as nimble and quick as my marketing team. I can assure you of that. We came up with an idea on Monday to have a landing page, and by Monday evening, we had this landing page out, and it looks so professional. We're touching on parts that are not even to do with eShipper and shipping, but I think it's important to our customer base that they have these resources at their fingertips. One quick thing I wanted to touch on is, it may not be the best time to join Amazon and be on their marketplace, but how easy is it to do it? If I have a Shopify store and I want to diversify, because Blair, you had mentioned earlier, the traffic going into Amazon is so good right now. If I go on Amazon FBM and I create my listing, how easy is it for me if I have a Shopify store to get on Amazon, or if I have a WooCommerce store to get on Amazon? So to answer that question, it is pretty simple, actually. There are apps out there that allow you to do so. And more importantly, there are people like us who have a huge network of facilitating developers and so on that can really help you do that. So if you want to diversify into Amazon, you've got the main man Blair just there. Part of his role at AMZ outside of marketing is really to help people to optimize their listings, create their listings. We have a bunch of clients at eShipper today that come to us and say, I want to be on Amazon, but I have no idea where to start. So you have the right people on this chat right now to be able to help you with that. And most importantly, reach out to us. We have the knowledge and the expertise, so we can definitely help you with that.
And I think on top of
Now,
that, T, like right now, as everyone's in quarantine, like people are trying to learn more about the different marketplaces. Like a lot of our sellers, they have the extra time on their hands right now. So they're trying to learn how to go into Shopify. They're trying to learn how easy it is to get on eBay. So I think very on the other side of it, where you guys see with the Shopify guys, there's so much good resources out there. A simple search in YouTube or Google, you'll see hundreds of videos. So the excuse that you guys can't do it, it's nimble because there's so much resources out there to be able to do it. So yeah, like while you have this time, it's a blessing and a curse that we're kind of all stuck at home, kind of doing our work. But at the other side of it, it allows you that gateway to diversify and try out those different marketplaces or different channels that usually aren't worth your time. Now, at least there's no excuses. You can kind of get up and running within a day or two. So it's much down the alleyway while you guys are staying at home, trying to stay cozy.
Yeah, and reach out to us. We've got I'm part of two Slack groups that have the biggest names in the developing market, or should I say the developer market, where people are able to set up your store within 24 to 48 hours. So reach out to us if we know somebody or we can help you with it ourselves. We will do, because the key for us is your success is our success. Remember that. And I think that is one of the main reasons why we create these Facebook Live events, because the more knowledge you have and the more as a business. So without further ado, I think, do you, Amelie, have any closing statements before we close down for the day?
It was just that's it, to reiterate that kind of positive mindset that it does trigger a bit of resilience thinking in all of us, and it can come up as an opportunity, actually, I think.
Yeah, I think the same
Absolutely.
thing.
Blair, any closing
Yeah.
statement?
Yeah, I think at least I can say it on the Amazon forefront. Just take a step back and breathe. A lot of people are really tense and they're really worried about what it's going to look like over the next few weeks. But take this as a learning curve, diversify, look in the other opportunities, learn a little bit more, whether that's on the Shopify, whether that's about your currency exchange and how you can reduce the numbers, or just learn how to start doing your own marketing, learn how to find new products and new opportunities, or there's so much new vast opportunity. So at least taking the positive from it, I can take up how to learn currencies, or I might be able to hopefully go golfing too. So
Yeah, that's
these
it.
smaller opportunities,
Play
hopefully
piano.
take some time to kind of take the leave off your shoulders. Everything will go back to normal. Amazon is working hard to bring things back. So it's a hiccup, but at least on our guys' end, it looks like clear skies, hopefully sometime ahead. But you kind of have to tread through the murky waters to get there.
Yeah. So thank you both so much for taking the time. I think COVID-19 not only sets us up for digging deeper and thinking outside of the box, it also sets us up for what the world is going to look like in the next, 6 to 12 months. I don't think we're going to get to norm very quickly. And I think the faster each one of us can adapt and kind of make do with what we've got and think outside the box, the faster we're all going to be able to get back to a normal life. So I think from a business perspective, there's a push for people who are in retail to go online. I think we're talking to an audience today that is already online, that can diversify their markets and really go into different areas. But above and beyond, I think thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this with us. And like I said, Amelie, I think the next one we do outside of talking on Amazon, maybe we can bring one of your customers in. Blair, similar, I think a lot of the audience wants to learn more about Amazon. We can see from the questions and from the time we've spent, there's been so much engagement from the audience already. It would be great to be able to bring some of our customers in and kind of give a different perspective from their understanding and what they're finding in terms of where the market is going. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you all stay safe, stay indoors, and best of all, keep changing, keep adapting. You're awesome. Bye-bye.
Okay. See you guys.
Thank you, guys. I've learned
Bye.
a bunch from you two today. Ciao.
See ya.